Alright guys, TacticalRab here again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Development on this Pred situation continuing to go down, especially with new evidence as to exactly the way that OpTic have treated Pred since his departure from the organisation, it seems, a couple of weeks ago. This one might be explainable with a bit of context, but it certainly doesn't take away from the fact that OpTic say the door is open to Pred. That does not necessarily seem to be the case based on the way that things have happened over the last couple of weeks, but very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Starting with Shotzzy, this is Hacienda, and we know there are a few spots on this map, for example, that Octane was using. This one, to be fair though, is actually, well, this is a spot you can get in if you want to. Pretty sure this was not a possibility back on the original game. Reminds me a bit as well as to what Huke was talking about with Shotzzy in the Flycast. We talked about his kind of perspective on a few things yesterday, but he also mentioned in the episode how when he was first coming across the name Shotzzy, he of course was, playing COD at the time, Huke was, and Shotzzy was a Halo kid playing the occasional bit of COD, and they played a couple of games together and Shotzzy was showing Huke's spots, and Huke was like, hang on a second, I play this game for a living every day, you don't, you're a Halo kid, and yet you're finding things that I never found in my life. So I don't understand how Shotzzy, well I do understand, he's just built different I guess, but yeah, Shotzzy has some sort of a knack for finding stuff like this, and yeah, this is an interesting one, and to be fair, it's actually very useful, to be honest here, right? The idea of getting onto this spot in Hacienda, especially because that's well, there's a search and destroy bomb site there, there's a hardpoint location there as well, this is a rather valuable spot. So yeah, more useful maybe than the one that Octane used where you go up in the sky, and also this should be allowed, right? You'd imagine, because you're swimming in the water. There's this, thing that you can hop on top of. You're standing on a ledge. Doesn't seem anything wrong with this in my opinion. Obviously, Shotzzy also at this map, just in general with the Jackal, is going to be having a field day. And, well, here's Shotzzy absolutely running rings around these guys in multiple domains. So, yeah, I mean, look at this guy. He comes out of the window, comes back in. I didn't even know you could do that. But, these are the type of thing that Shotzzy is doing on the regular. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows for him. I mean, I did see this going around yesterday as well. Here we are on Vault, and this guy comes around the corner, and I mean, the cameras here are pretty wild. I think this is expected, frankly, with the Omni movement and the way that it is. But on that guy's screen, doesn't look anything special. He backwards slides around the corner, spins around and kills Shotzzy. But on Shotzi's screen, I mean, this guy, his character, I mean, what did he do? Like a front flip or something crazy like that? And I know that Clayster was talking about it as well and saying, hang on a second, that was actually a character model sliding. Like, what is actually going on here? So, Treyarch, I think, knew this, and everyone knew this when they were designing the Omni movement mechanics, was that, okay, there are going to be some broken cameras because of this, but I guess that was a sacrifice they were willing to make, and we are seeing the consequences right about now. Just before we get to the Pred stuff, thought this is kind of cool that JoeDeceives points out from streams charts, looking at the most hours watched, basically, by different streamers in Call of Duty. Understandably, Scump is reigning supreme here with 10.88 million hours watched over 2024. Pretty crazy stuff. Airtime 919 hours, of course, largely on YouTube, of course, streaming the CDL games. Few of the notable people too. There was a chance apparently that Zuma and Nadeshot might get into this list as well by the end of the year once the final December stats are in, because those guys, of course, as always, have been absolutely killing it. But let's talk about this Pred situation again, because it continues to cause controversy in the community. Pred's no longer part of OpTic, we know that for sure. It's out of his bio, they've unfollowed him on Twitter, he's no longer an affiliate. And obviously initially when he was no longer an affiliate, it was like, oh my god, wow, like, if they run out of money or something, they can't pay for it anymore. But no, I think it's quite clear that they've removed him from the organisation. But obviously Hicksy the other day came out and said, look, the door is never closed, we're in close communication with Pred, and, the fans need to stop asking questions, which is fair enough. Like, we're not entitled to know the whole story. But obviously many fans are saying, well, when XYZ is the way that things are being portrayed publicly, and then there's maybe a different perception from internally at OpTic, you're wondering, okay, what exactly, what is the full story here? Especially when Huke the other day was effectively talking about the fact that he was on OpTic, and that deal was not done, but on the day that they played their final game with Pred, they were speaking with Huke. Apparently the next day, they got together and effectively got the deal done before then Pred, I guess, realised that he was no longer part of the future plans. And maybe Pred should have figured that out before because of what was happening behind the scenes. But look, we know that OpTic went to some lengths to quite quickly scrub him from the organisation, which, I get it. If he's no longer part of the organisation for whatever reason, it makes sense why they're going to make changes. This, of course, was the most notable one when OpTic, were advertising their winter collection or whatever. And this is Pred. You guys can see him in the bottom left-hand side. I can just zoom in, I guess, I suppose. Here's Pred here next to Zinni. And then in the next shot, you'll find this was, the next time they played their matches. Pred was gone from the image. Of course, that was a big talking point. And yesterday, this was, another piece of evidence around this was spotted from the OpTic, where they're practicing basically at the moment. So here's Huke on the right-hand side with the new roster. And look, there's a few reasons why they might do this. And obviously, there's a bit of context involved that we can discuss. But still, the manner about, the way that it's been done, the timing of it just feels interesting in the context of a potential of Pred, coming back in the future. Hex was talking about the doors never closed. Obviously, there's been discussion as to, well, if Huke doesn't work out, could they sign Pred again? I wouldn't rule out the possibility, but to me, it just seems unlikely based on the things that we are seeing here. There's also been talk, you guys mentioned a couple of days ago on Cloud9. We saw Nachok gave his thoughts on why Cloud9, in his opinion, maybe aren't the team that they could be, and obviously we know that Pred gets along well with Sib and with Accuracy and those guys as well. So there might be something in that in the longer term as well. But this I thought was pretty notable. On the left-hand side here, this is not long ago, I'd imagine. We've got the OpTic flag, and we've got 3 images in the OpTic practice spot. This is them, winning the World Championship, I think, in Dallas. This, of course, looks like Shotzzy, right? And then, of course, this is Pred, a very famous picture from their World Championship success this most recent season. On the right-hand side, of course, you'll find, and I can zoom in a little bit more as well, this picture is now gone. Those other 2 pictures are still there. It's the same room. Obviously, I mean, there's no doubt that we're looking at the same room at this point. But yeah, obviously a little while later, and the Pred image has disappeared. Now, there's a couple of reasons why this might have been the case. I mean, did Pred take it with him? I mean, it's not impossible, right? Pred might have flown back to Australia, but seems a bit doubtful to me that Pred would have said, I'm going to come to the facility, pick up the picture, pack it in my suitcase, try not to get it, smashed or whatever, and then take it back to Australia. Maybe he did. Just seems a bit implausible to me. Seems more likely they took it down because Pred was off the team. And sure, it makes sense, right? I mean, Huke is literally here in the shot. If you're Huke, do you want to be looking up at, the guy that you replaced, a picture of him on the wall? Maybe not, but also does it really matter? At the end of the day, I feel like that's a pretty hype picture of Pred, and he's an important part of the history of OpTic Texas, and certainly the history of OpTic Gaming therefore as well. Won the World Championship with the team, was a crucial reason as to why the energy that Pred brought to OpTic was something that they've not had in years, and I think it was critical. Was Kenny a bigger part of their World Championship win this season, in terms of what he did for the team? I would argue possibly yes, but Pred was definitely right up there. So certainly in, regular sports context, even in esports context, you might expect pictures of players that have won for the organization in the past to stay on the wall or whatever, even when a new player comes in. So this context is kind of strange, especially for Huke. Pred's gone mid-season, Huke's coming to replace him. I understand a little bit in that context why they might remove the image, but just the way that they've done it, right? Like, they've not reorganized the other 2 images to be one above the other. They've just removed the Pred shot, and that's it. So it's kind of all wonky, you know what I mean? Like, it looks like it's been done in a bit of a hurry. They're like, we've got to just remove the evidence here, which is strange in the context of, well, obviously Hex came out afterwards and said, still one of our friends, he's going through a tough time, I can't discuss on something that's not my business. Of course, Pred gave his perspective on it, says that they're still in conversations with each other, and also said that he was never going to close the door to Pred. I did think this was kind of interesting from this guy, the last exit 23. Obviously, it's a Reddit post, take it with a pinch of salt, but he does say the following: he's an executive in a multi-million-dollar company that deals with advertisers and culture brands. So, yeah, this is just his perspective on why OpTic have handled it in this way. So I thought, we could go through it and see what you guys think in the comments below, because obviously there's some, frustration from the community as to the way that this whole thing has been handled. But he says the following: when you have to let someone go because of an offense that likely has legal complications and possible damage to a client relationship, you do exactly this. You remove them from the facilities as quickly as possible. You remove all remains of their employment, in this case removing him from banners, merch, etc., etc. You inform your staff internally about the goings-on to whatever degree your lawyers and executive team agree on. So this is all interesting, isn't it? Because, to be fair, the way this situation has been handled does smell a little bit like, you know, the lawyers are saying, maybe you shouldn't say this, shouldn't say that, I don't know. With the caveat that everything being discussed must remain confidential and inside company walls, otherwise you too can and will face consequences and possible termination, because that is what your lawyers would have advised until the matter is legally cleared. So again, this comes back to the whole idea of if Pred was going through the issues that we think he might have done, given that, you know, OpTic is sponsored by, I don't know, FanDuel, PrizePicks, whatever it is, right, sportsbook sponsor anyway, that, you know, his opinion is, this last exit guy, that whole situation, if it's true, would be a bit of a minefield legally. I also kind of like this thing that he says on how in regular sports it's a bit different, because in regular sports there are billions of dollars flowing around in media contracts to such an extent that the teams are on some level obligated to talk to the media. That's not really a thing in Call of Duty and in esports at large in general. So you know, the theory I guess is that in regular sports you might find the teams will usually say something. Obviously it was interesting because LeBron stepped out, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago when Pred stepped out at a similar time, and there wasn't really any explanation on that. But generally speaking in sport, if there's something like this would happen, you know, they'd talk about it publicly to the media via sources, via media outlets. But obviously it's a bit of a different story here, and well, that's why Scump and the rest refused to say his name. That's just the weird thing, isn't it, right? Because when the whole Illy situation happens, yeah, maybe they didn't talk about him much, maybe they removed him from the organization, they were a bit quiet about it, but you know, Scump would still come out on stream and say, oh, you know, wishing Inda the best, hope, you know, still a good player and all this, and we still heard those things, whereas Pred is a name that OpTic don't want to utter, really, and obviously the question still is as to why. So, you know, that's what this guy says anyway. That's when it's discussed. It's all ambiguous vanilla information. It's not worth the risk ever. And, you know, this guy's perspective is if they're going to this length, this quick, it's not just he put a bunch of dollars on a few NBA games. We'll likely never get the full story, but he'll never play for OpTic. That was kind of the take, because I guess what Hex said is that the door is never closed to someone who was on OpTic coming back. I guess he didn't say that we want him back necessarily. We're very much intrigued to your thoughts as always in the comment section below. It's yeah, maybe this is the last we're gonna say on the matter, but it feels like every few days there's a little bit more of a, you know, sprinkle of information that comes through, and people are still trying to piece together the whole story as to what happened behind the scenes. We're probably never gonna get the full story, and that's probably fine. But you know, people, as they have been doing over the last 48 hours, are gonna continue to speculate. Just thought this is kind of interesting as well. We mentioned the other day that Illy's been playing a lot with Shotzzy and Huke. I'm not saying, oh well, Illy's back on OpTic, here we go, but it is interesting at least to see that trio playing together quite a lot lately, because Shotzzy and Huke now are back on OpTic as a duo. I think, as we said the other day, Illy could be a good substitute option if they wanted to do it, which, you know, they may not need, and as I said also the other day, most organizations right now don't have the willingness or the money to sign a substitute player. I think Illy would be valuable in that context. If there was infinite money flowing around, Illy's challengers team would probably end up getting signed as like OpTic Nation, right, or whatever. Illy would be the official sub. The rest of the guys would be on Texas Nation, or whatever they called that team back in Vanguard when they had General and the boys as kind of like their second team. That could be the case here with Illy's roster, but it seems relatively unlikely. But it's just nice to see Illy getting back involved with those guys, because, you know, his return to the CDL may be following Huke's in the relatively near future. But intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Today, Tony had to walk through the front door head first today because he couldn't fit. He couldn't walk in straight. He had to turn his head to the side because the side of his head was getting stuck.
Tommy's dumbass
at the side of the fucking board.
Tommy's dumbass locked the bathroom from the wrong side, so he crawled under the door like a mouse to get in. So instead of picking the lock, he just crawled on under.
We had dinner today on the back of Tony's head. We used the back of Tony's head as a fucking table.
I used him as a fork.
We were cutting the chicken parm on the back of his head because it's so fucking big.
I was using him as a fork.
You know what I mean?
This is incredible.
Fucking big ass back. He's got a fucking big ass back.
You know what I mean?
You know what I mean?
It was impeccable.